Hello YouTube, this is the Atlanta Puzzler with a new video here on how to customize the behavior of OnShape using feature scripts. If you are not familiar, feature script is it's a programming language basically within OnShape that can define new behaviors and new operations, new functions. In fact, the existing operations out of the box in OnShape, like extrude, revolve, sweep, loft, and so on, are all written in feature scripts. So it is a programming language, and it is sort of beyond the scope of this channel. But it's very important in one regard, right? There are a lot of cases you're going to encounter where OnShape cannot handle certain operations, such as multi-split, which is the focus of this video. And the way you get around that, instead of having to do a lot of tedious work, is to use a feature script or write your own or use an existing one. So what I was hoping to do is to write the multi-split feature using feature script and put it in a document and share with you guys to use in your future cubes. And this will become very important because frankly, without multi-split, I am not sure how I'll be able to do the more complex and more involved puzzles unless I use someone else's scripts, and there are plenty of them out there. But I just thought maybe this will get you guys excited about maybe getting into learning a feature script. So to get started, I created this test document here, and it contains two cubes, cube 1 and cube 2, two parts, and it has three surfaces, surface 1, 2, and 3. And the surfaces cross the cubes at multiple angles, as you see, this way, this way, this way. So what if I want to split these cubes using the three planes? The existing native split function in OnShape is here. It says select one or more parts to split, select the plane singular or surface to split with. So I can say I want to split cube 1, cube 2, but then it'll only allow you to choose one single surface, I apologize. So let's say I choose surface 1 and do OK. And this is invalid input selection. Interesting. Oh, sorry. Let me get rid of this. Let me choose part 1 and part 2. Come on. Here we go. And I want to split with surface 1 and do OK. And now if you notice, we already have a split in place with the cubes. Let me hide the sketch. And there's one more sketch. Okay, here we go. You notice I did split the two cubes, so there's this part and this part, part 2. I split these cubes, but what if I want to continue with the other surfaces, right? Like I want to split with this surface. The issue now is I'll have to run the split operation again. I have to click on choose this cube and this cube, the remainder of this cube and this cube, and imagine you have to also include the leftovers as well. So now we have more, we have up to 4 parts, and then I want to choose this surface and choose this surface to split with and do OK. And now I have multiple pieces, and some of them are tiny, like this one in the middle. I have many parts, and then when I split them with the last surface, I have to again click split and do the same process all over again. So as you can imagine, if you have if when we design a cube or a dodecahedron or any puzzle, and you have these cutting profiles and you model them on many faces, splitting is going to be a nightmare. Like I Can't even imagine having to do it by hand. So for that purpose, we can define our own feature script, write a program real quick together. And if you find it difficult or hard to follow, that's okay. Um, what I'm hoping is for you to at least get familiar with the spirit of what these custom scripts are meant for and designed for, and how you can import them into your projects and utilize them. It'll just make your life easier. And if you have any JavaScript or any server side, any background in programming whatsoever, I think this will be just a walk in the park. So to get started real quick, I'm gonna delete this assembly tab. It's not needed, and then you don't need to do this. I just like to get rid of unneeded stuff, and I'm gonna click on the plus sign and choose Create Feature Studio, second option. And now we have a new tab, and you're gonna notice it looks just like it's just a text editor with some text here. And line 2 here, import, is bringing in the standard library from OnShape if you're curious, but you don't need to know what that means. And to get started, I want to click this button here that says new feature, and I'm going to click on it, and it will generate a bunch of code. And this line here, the annotation, it says feature type name. This is where you specify the name of this feature. So you can call this whatever you want. I mean, I just figured when you split something, you're splitting it twice, but when you split it multiple times, you're dicing it, I guess. It's like when you chop. So I'm gonna call it dice. Hopefully, hopefully that's clear enough. Maybe you can add something like multi-split or split many. I've seen this notation in other programming languages, but this is optional. I'm gonna call it dice. And this is the actual declaration of the feature, line 5, and it says export something called my feature. And I don't want to give it a variable name, my feature, so I'll call it dice. At a convention, you prefix things with the letter F for function, define feature, and these are just the parameters passed in. Okay, if you notice here, we have two sections. Precondition, there's a line here that says define the parameters for the feature, and a line that says define the functions for the feature. And anything that is prefixed with / is called a comment, which means it's not really part of the program. It's a message from one programmer to another that here's what you do. This section here contains the user interface for the feature, which is the dialog, the modal where you input data from the user, and this is the actual logic that applies the feature. And I know, if this sounds confusing, bear with me, and it'll get clear real soon. So here, I went ahead and deleted the comment. We don't need it. And to get started, I'm going to go to the menu that says P, Feature Parameters, and choose Query Parameter. There are many types of parameters, but I don't want to overwhelm you with all of them. For now, we'll do Query Parameter. And what a Query Parameter is, it's think of it as a selection that the user makes, and you use that info to interrogate the document and find out the different parts of it, like if they want to select a cube or a face on a cube or a vertex or whatever. So the name, it says my query. Immediately we delete this. You want to give it something descriptive of what is this field for. So I'm going to say parts to dice. And from the title, I hope it's self-explanatory for people who are going to use this feature. It's going to say, here you're going to select the parts that you want to dice, like the different multiple cubes or multiple and so on. And this is, it says filter. And by default, it says only allow the user to pick faces. And I don't want that. When I want to dice, I want to pick body. But also, I don't want to pick any body. Some bodies are surfaces, like sheet. I wanna choose a body with body type, and you can see this a thing pops up here that gives you options. Body type dot solid, because I only want to dice solids. I don't want to dice sheets. Next, it says maximum number of picks. The way it is right now, it says one. You can only choose one cube or one part, which is actually very limiting. So you can make that 9, you can make it 10, but frankly, I don't see a reason why we limit it. I mean, you might want to limit it for performance reasons, but if you want to make it unlimited, you just go ahead and delete this code. But I'm thinking I want to leave it in place for you guys just to be aware that here's how you limit it. And I'm going to set it to 99, which is more than what you need. Anyways, you can set it to more, you can clear it, doesn't matter. Okay, on line 9 it says definition dot. Definition is a parameter that's been passed into the feature by the engine. It hands you this object called definition, which is of type map, and you want to capture this parameter after a user selects this info. You want to select it in this. You want to capture it in this definition object, and if that doesn't make sense, that's fine. All you gotta know is just where it says definition dot, give it a descriptive name that, I'm gonna call this parts. This, if the user selects multiple parts, shove them in this in under this key of the definitions object. So I want people to use to select multiple parts. Next, I'm gonna put the cursor here. I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna choose a query parameter, and instead of my query, I want people to choose the surfaces to split with. So I'm gonna say surfaces to, I guess, dice with, or dicing surfaces, or something like this. Okay. Again, I don't want people to choose a face on a solid. I want to choose a body object here. But then the body must have a body type. It must be a surface, a sheet, right? So I'm going to do body type dot sheet. There you go. And again, let's make this 99. Now, if you leave this at 1, then this is exactly what the existing split feature native to OnShape support. We want to have something more capable, which allows you to use multiple surfaces. And again, for my query, let's call these surfaces, I guess, or selected surfaces, whatever you want to call it. Actually, let's call it selected surfaces and selected parts. I think maybe bodies is better. Okay, no problem. So once you're done typing, click commit, and what commit does, essentially, it saves the document. So let's save. We're good at stopping point. Okay, now we're going to start coding here in this next section. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And by the way, you can add as many parameters as you want. Some people use the keep tools boolean or a checkbox, but I think these are bells and whistles that we can enhance later, or maybe you can look into it. Okay, now let's start the program. I'm going to declare a variable var. If you haven't noticed, a feature script has syntax similar to JavaScript. Both are C-based type syntax, if that makes sense. So if you're familiar with any of these languages, this will make sense. So we'll do var surfaces, which is just a variable, and I want to go ahead and I want to query the document. I want to query the design that I have with the different parts in it, and look for the surfaces that the user selected to dice with, right? And to query anything, go to the E menu and select the drop down, and they're all functions that start with the letter E. Like, this is how you find which axis, or a vertex point, or an owner of a sketch plane, or a distance between two objects, or an area, and whatever. I'm not seeing um, the evaluate query here. Let me do, oh, it might be in this menu actually here. These are the operations. Okay. Anyways, type evaluate query, and the dialog here pops up to tell you, okay, here's the function. We're gonna take in some context, and don't worry about it. That's the same context passed in by the engine. But then here it needs a query. It needs a query object to evaluate, to execute this query. Okay. Um, what this query is gonna be, like, let's call it the you want to get the body owners, the body that owns a surface selected by the user. So call it selected surfaces query equal. What I did here is I'm declaring a variable to capture that query that I'm going to pass in under the surface. So I'll do selected surface query equals, there's a function here under the Q menu called owner body. So Q subtraction. Of course, the functions that I want are never here. That's fine. We'll do Q owner. See, there's Q owned by a body, Q owned, the Q owner body. So I'm going to choose that one. Of what? Of these guys, right? So I'm going to do definition, which is the object dot, the object passed in by the engine dot selected surfaces. I'm going to pass these selected surfaces selected by the user in the dialog into this QOwner body function, and that will generate a query for me, a lazy loaded query basically, that, okay, this query is capable of interrogating the document that we have and resolving what bodies belong to the selection that the user made. So I'm going to take that query and pass it into this evaluate query function, that which will yield the surfaces selected by our users. So now we have these actually surfaces that we're going to dice with. Okay, and next I'm going to declare the bodies, a variable that will contain my bodies, and this will be simply the definition object dot selected bodies, which is what the user selected here in this definition object. I just like to capture it in a variable called bodies directly. Okay, so now let's get to the heart of the feature. We're going to use a thing called for loop here. There's multiple types of loop, but we'll use a classic for loop for this. And what a for loop is, you can read on it in programming languages. It's a way to, it's an iterator. There's also while loops and for each and for n, whatever. And it's a way to say, take these many objects and loop through them over and over and over, and do the same operation for all of them, or a similar operation, whatever. And when you type for, what this is saying, use an index called I, start it from number 0 and until a certain value called count. I want to loop through every one of my surfaces, right? But how many surfaces are there going to be? I'll do number of surfaces equals, there's a function called size. Sorry, I'm used to other IDEs. Size, and I'm going to give it the surfaces array that I have at the top. And basically I'm saying, give me the count of surfaces that you have in this variable. And I'm going to replace the word count with this. I'm basically saying, from the ith index equals 0, so long that you're less than the number of surfaces, and this means increment the counter by 1 at a time. I mean, you can, in some cases you might want to increment by, I don't know, even numbers by 2 or multiples of 3 or whatever. But in this case, we're going to go from, if I have 9 surfaces, I'm going to go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way to 8, because this is 0 based, right? That's why this is less than. I hope this makes sense. But anyways, I'm going to loop through all the surfaces. And in every iteration of the loop, I'm gonna look at the current surface. I'm gonna call it just declare a variable called surface. Which how do I access it? I'll go to my surfaces object here, which is an array of surfaces, and I'm gonna access the ith surface. Sorry, and I want to give this guy a unique ID. So I don't like how featurescript handles IDs, but that's fine. I'll call it something like new. Um, this is not. This is gonna be actually the ID of the generated part. Um, if when I take a part, if I take a cube and I split it in half, the initial one part will have the name cube, the original name, and the one we split off is going to have a new ID, and that's what I'm trying to determine here. So I'm going to say new part ID. Let's give it the name of the original cube or an original part. I'm sorry, ID, and I'm going to add to it. Let's call it diced part, I guess. But then, okay, let's stop here for a moment. What happens is this will take the ID object that is passed in by the engine, and we're adding a new entry to it, a new record in the ID hierarchy. FeatureScript uses this hierarchical ID structure for some odd reason. I don't know. But anyways, it says add this thing called diced part, but every time I split one, I don't want to call them diced part, diced part. I want to add a count to it. And the way you add a count is you use a tilde sign. And I'm sorry, the tilde is outside, and I'm gonna do I. So whatever the counter is, 0, 1, 2, 3, go ahead and add this to this ID. I don't know if I should maybe capitalize here. Okay, diced part. That won't matter. It's just okay. Now, how do I split one of the bodies with the current surface? There's a function here in this menu. I think it'll be here called OP for operation and then split, which is not there, but type OP split, and you'll see there's all that sweep, split part, split face, shell, fill out. All the native operations are here. So I'll do split part, and it'll generate this code which says it's going to pass in a context, and it's going to pass in some ID of something, and I don't want this. I want to use what I already declared here, new part ID. Essentially, this function is asking you, what do you want to call the new part that will be generated from the split? And I'm going to call it new part ID. And for the targets is which parts do you want to split? So this is the bodies, which comes from here, if you remember. And the tool that I want to split with is going to be this guy, the surface. Okay, so this will go ahead and split everything, and you will end up with two little things. So how do two little parts? How do I two smaller parts? How do I get a handle or access that split off part? How can I get a reference to that object? And why do I need a reference to it? Because potentially this newly generated object is going to participate in the next split operation. Or next dice operation. When I cut with surface one, I end up with two bodies. I want the two bodies cut with the next surface, and if that yields four bodies, I want those four bodies to participate in the next split operation, and so on. So how do I get access to the new part? I'm going to capture in a variable called new part. Again, we're going to use this quOwnerBody function, quOwnerBody. And for the query, we're not going to be able to, we don't have a definition selected by the user. We have an ID here, which is used by the split. But so we'll have to use a function called createdBy. So just do actually, you know what? I don't want to. I want to inline it here. let's use this function under the Q menu. I'm just hoping, okay, here we go. Okay, finally I found something. Created by, it's using ID plus extrude. We're going to use the new part ID, which is the ID I declared here. So whatever was created by this operation, give me that body, and give me that query and find me the owner of that body, and that will be the new part. Okay, and finally, that was a little tricky for me to kind of research online, but basically I want to take my body's object, but what was tricky is to use a function called QUnion, which is here. I want to combine the existing bodies array that we started with, that the user selected. I want to add to it the new part object that we created, and I must terminate with a semicolon. There you go. So I'm going to click commit really quick. So this took longer than I thought, but I wanted to make sure I cover over the details. Basically, let me give you a quick overview. Here we define this user interface, which basically says selects all the parts that you want to dice and select all the surfaces you want to dice with. And the way we generated those is by going here and choosing a query parameter. And there are other parameters that you can play with. And for the behavior, we said take the selection the user made and find me the bodies of each one of those surfaces in this query, and then evaluate the query to give me the actual surface. And this is, we just basically took these bodies selected by the user here, and that's okay because I mean, it's okay to use definitions that selected bodies throughout the code, but I much rather capture it in a variable. It's cleaner. So we took the count of surfaces and we iterated through each one of them, and during each one we called the part diced part, I don't know, 0, diced part 1, diced part 2, and so on. Maybe we should actually increment the I by 1, but it's okay, it doesn't matter. Here's the actual split operation, and then we said take this new part ID, find me the operation that created it, and give me the owning body, and that would be this part, and go ahead and add it to the bodies array so that next time we iterate it's available in that list to be split. And then we saved, and I think this is the format. It kind of cleans up the indentations and stuff. Okay, all this sounds, you know, complicated and easy and whatever. How do we actually test it? Okay, the way we test it is, let's go back to our document here, or any document for that matter. And if you look, there's a custom features in this workspace. It's a drop down menu with this cube or whatever. Click on the drop down and you see dice split many, and you notice one thing. It took that name. Let me go back here. It took that name that we used here. It's the same exact name it used. So I mean, make sure you give it a more descriptive name. You can give it your own name, whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that feature to invoke it. Of course, if you don't like it here, you can click on add custom features and then go to that, you know, add it permanently here instead of having to access it from the drop down. But anyways, here's what matters. It's interesting it put a 1 here. I'm not sure why. We'll revisit this in a moment, but okay. So parts to dice. This blue field is actually the first section that we have here, and the one under it, the surfaces to dice with, is actually this piece right here. Okay, there are other things we need to do, like we need to annotate this to be required, otherwise, it should turn pink, and so on. Things like that. I think it might be required by default. So we'll come here and so, okay, what parts do I want to dice? I want to take the first cube and the second cube. You notice it behaves just like any native feature. Like there's nothing. Surfaces to dice with. You notice this is not pink. I mean, it should be required, but we don't have to worry about this. Um, Notice I shouldn't be able to pick parts because we restricted this guy to surfaces. So I should only be able to pick surfaces. So if I choose surface 1, I get an error. And 2 and 3. I'm not sure what's going on, but let's do okay. And did not regenerate, error regenerating. Okay, so we made a mistake somewhere. So let's click at this icon here, and this kind of pops up this debugging menu, and it says the OP split part feature ID may not contain spaces. So it seems like it didn't like the fact that I put a space here. So I corrected and did commit. And let's see if this will work. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It's not, I think maybe this is what it's not liking. No. Okay, let me take a quick look here. What else? Oh, I'm sorry. It's not that. Okay, this part here. Diced part. Okay, let me remove all the spaces. That was silly. It's kind of late. But anyways, I'll do commit. Come back and let's see. Okay, much better. And look, we have part 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a bunch of parts here in the drop down. And that's a multi-part feature right here. Okay, okay, now it also corrected the one. There's a one here in the list. Let me try to delete this, and let's try it again. I want to see if, okay, it keeps adding one. I'm not sure why. So, but it's not a problem. Anyways, I'm glad you guys. Um, I'm glad I made the video. I was hoping you guys will benefit from kind of getting an idea of how feature scripts are beneficial, and this is a very simple feature, but I mean, you know um, you can end up making many operations, like automating some of the stuff, like some certain cuts that you want to do over and over. You can automate that with a feature, and you can share with your friends and can put it in a namespace. Anyways, um, this video is slightly longer than I really wanted to. So just to wrap up, I want to make this shareable. So I'm going to right click and do rename. And I want to call it dice tool. And this workspace is useful. Let's call it, let me rename it to dice tool test. If you want to kind of try and use these cubes. Okay, what do we call the document? Let's call this document um, tools. I don't know. Atlanta Puzzler tools. I'll put it in this folder, in this document. I'm sorry. I'll rename it to Atlanta Puzzler tools. And what I'm hoping for is to have many tabs in the future for different tools that y'all can use. So okay, I have tools. What else? I think in order to use this, I'll have to version it. So this will be alpha, so we'll make it 0.1, I guess. We'll call it, we'll name it added uh, dice tool, and dice tool tests, something like that. Hopefully every revision kind of gives you one atomic change, once something descriptive that. But anyways, that tool can be modified and cleaned up. um, I'll have a document called Atlanta Puzzler Tools. Ironically, I have my own tools folder here, but you guys can search for this and find the dice tool, and you can bring it into your workspace and use it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it wasn't too daunting or technical, and even if you did not follow some of the technical programming details, hopefully you um, kind got the big picture and at least saw how you can import someone else's tools and use them in your own space. And look forward for more videos where I actually I'm gonna heavily use this tool. I'll probably clean up some of the code and add some bells and whistles, but I plan on using it heavily in the future. So in future videos. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know if you have any comments or questions in the video. Have a good night. Thank you.